Think about this. Troy Taylor is coaching in his third conference in 3 seasons. Taylor was at FCS Sacramento State in the Big Sky back in 2022, took the Stanford job last year in the Pac-12, and is now leading the Cardinal into their ACC debut. No one said rebuilding Stanford was going to be easy, and that's certainly proving to be the case. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad you could join us today for our official Stanford college football prediction. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below, including our website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for those newsletters and sign up for those expert picks, some of the best picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country. And the earlier you sign up for those, the better, because there's tons of exclusive content over there for you. So go check it out. The link's down in the description below. And also check out our mailing address. We'd love to get some Stanford gear to be represented back here on our wall. All this stuff has been sent in by you, members of the GE Nation. We'd love to represent Stanford or whoever your team may be and make you a member of our GE Nation that we hope to continue to expand from coast to coast, just like many of the games at Stanford will be playing from coast to coast. So the Cardinal, guys, we knew it was going to be a tough task. Last year, their roster was absolutely depleted, and they went 3-9. They did have that massive 29-point comeback against Colorado, and they did beat Washington State, both of them on the road. So did win 2 games in Pac-12 play. 3-9, though, had 2 one-possession losses to Troy Taylor's former team in Sacramento State and a 1-point loss to Arizona. But this is still a team that's going to take a long time to get back to where they once were. They haven't been to a bowl game since 2018. Still have a lot of inexperience and youth on this team, which is a blessing and a curse. So you look at Troy Taylor. He's a program builder. He rebuilt Sacramento State. He's going to do the same with Stanford. Just got to give him time. You take a look at this roster, though. Much better than last year. 10 back on offense. An offense that only averaged 20.6 points per game. Ashton Daniels returns as their quarterback after throwing for over 2,200 yards and 11 touchdowns last year. He has his top 3 pass catchers returning, including the star, Alec Ayomanor, over 1,000 yards last year and 6 touchdowns. And this is a team that should have a much better offensive line after giving up 41 sacks in 2023. They had 4 games where they allowed 5 sacks or more. So the passing stats, honestly, it's amazing they're as good as they were, considering that Daniels rarely had any time to sit in the pocket and throw. Defensively, they were bad. Stanford gave up nearly 38 points per game, over 460 yards per game, and nearly 300 passing yards per game. They need desperate help in the secondary. Luckily for them, 8 starters are back on that side of the ball. 6 of their top 7 tacklers are back, including Gathan Bernardell and Tristan Sinclair, both of which are going to anchor that linebacking core. The secondary returns fully intact and should take a major leap forward. Still not going to be great, but should take a leap forward compared to where they were last year. The Stanford team, guys, has the talent to compete a lot better. They might not rack up a bunch more wins, 3-9 last year, but they're going to be a lot more competitive than they were. Take a look at their schedule. The reason Stanford may struggle again this year is because it is absolutely brutal. They play all the top dogs in the ACC. They get to draw Notre Dame in the non-conference, and they get TCU in the season opener in the non-conference. So just a brutal schedule for a team that's making this transition to a new conference until trying to get back just to relevancy in college football as a whole. But you take a look at that TCU game. TCU was disappointing last year too, 5-7 a year after becoming the national runner-up. But they are much improved this year. That passing attack was dangerous. Despite going 5-7, they averaged 312 passing yards per game with Josh Hoover at quarterback. And I know the Horned Frogs are very excited to see what he can do again this year with a better roster, better pass catchers, better defense as a whole. TCU will bounce back. Not bounce back to their 2022 form, but will bounce back in a big way. Even though they have to come all the way to Stanford, that passing attack is going to light up this secondary for the Cardinal. That's going to get better as the year goes on, but don't expect it to be immediate. So TCU beat Stanford. The Cardinal dropped to 0-1. They'll beat Cal Poly in week 2. They're 1-1. They won't lose to the FCS program like they did last year with Sacramento State. 1-1 heading into their bye week and their first ever ACC game at Syracuse. I want you to look at something real quick. If you look at that, back-to-back road games. Like, Stanford should be thanking the ACC, and that's sarcasm, by the way. They should be like, what the heck, ACC? We join your conference, and you reward us with traveling from California all the way to Syracuse for our first ever game, and then The next week, we don't get a home game. We've got to go back on the road, way out east, to take on Clemson. I think it's crazy that they've got to do that back-to-back weeks. It's going to be over 4,600 miles of travel for Stanford in 2 weeks as they play Syracuse and Clemson, and it should note that both of those are going to be losses for the Cardinal. They're not going to beat Syracuse, 2,100 miles away from Stanford. First ever ACC game, but Stanford's loaded. Kyle McCord, LaQuinn Allen, Oronde Gadsden, 8 starters back on defense, and a very underrated and dangerous coach in Fran Brown. So they're not beating Syracuse, and they're certainly not beating Clemson, maybe the ACC favorite this year in Death Valley, where they rarely lose. They lost to Florida State at home last year. That was their first conference loss at home since 2016, if that tells you anything. So they're not beating Syracuse, they're not beating Clemson, and they're going to be exhausted with all of this travel. Then they get Virginia Tech and Notre Dame, 2 very, very, very good teams, neither of which Stanford is good enough to beat. Virginia Tech, yes, has a long road trip out to Stanford. A 2010 Orange Bowl rematch, I should add. 2010 Orange Bowl rematch between the Cardinal and the Hokies. Stanford won that game 40-12, but this time they're not going to win. And this time it's not going to be, really the scores could be reversed. It could be Virginia Tech wins 40-12. It's their first ACC home game. I expect the crowd to show up in full force. It's going to be an exciting time for this program. But Virginia Tech returns the most production in all of college football, including 95% of their offensive production. That does not bode well for a Stanford defense that still needs a lot of work and is still really trying to figure things out. So they will lose to the Hokies. They will lose at Notre Dame. Stanford, ironically, has won 2 of the last 3 games at Notre Dame, including a 16-14 upset in 2022 as 16.5-point underdogs. But Notre Dame is loaded this year. Riley Leonard comes in at quarterback. They really got some great wide receivers through the transfer portal, and that defense is going to be one of the best in the country, should be top 10 by season's end. Doesn't bode well for a Stanford team that was so bad offensively last year and still going to need some help, still needs some work on that side of the ball. So they're going to lose to Notre Dame. Syracuse, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, a brutal stretch there. And there's an opportunity that Clemson, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, SMU, who the Cardinal unfortunately will lose to as well, all of those teams could be top 25 programs when they face off. They could end up facing 4 straight top 25 teams in Clemson, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, and SMU. The Mustangs loaded on offense. SMU coming off the bye, so even though Stanford gets to host, SMU is going to be well rested. Stanford's going to be like, my God, we haven't had a bye week since September 14th. We've had over 4,600 miles of travel against Syracuse and Clemson, and we've just getting beaten down against these elite teams. SMU is going to come in there, I think, beat them down once again. They're too good offensively and defensively, especially up front. They are very, very solid. Could exploit that Stanford offensive line. So a rough start for the Cardinal, not because I think they're a really bad team, not because I don't think they have the talent. I think they're going to put up better fights against these programs than you might expect, and very better fights than you would have seen last year, but it's just a brutal schedule. They get a break, though. They get a break. I think Troy Taylor rallies his troops, and I think they get a conference win. Their first ever ACC win, I think, comes at home against Wake Forest. The first time they're going to get, at least until the beginning of the season, first time since the beginning of the season, they get back-to-back home games. They'll play SMU, they'll lose, they'll stay at home, play Wake Forest, and they'll win. They're going to be a little bit more rested, a little bit more healed, and they're playing a Wake Forest team that isn't all that great and having to travel a very, very long way, over 2,300 miles, to come play the Cardinal. And if you look at last year, Stanford struggled early on last year, kind of played a little bit better down the stretch. That's when they beat Colorado on the road. That's when they beat Washington State on the road. Maybe this is going to happen again for them. Maybe they're going to start off really slow, about mid-season. They pick it up a little bit. They come out of nowhere and get a win that no one's expecting. Not that Wake Forest is going to be some upset, but Stanford does get a win over the Demon Deacons. Wake Forest has not had that great of an offense. They're not going to come in here and torch this Stanford defense. And the Stanford offense can, I think, with their passing game, exploit a Wake Forest secondary that isn't going to be all that great. So the Cardinal finally get a win. They snap what's going to be a 5-game losing streak. They beat the Demon Deacons. They've got a conference win on their resume. That, to me, would be good enough considering this rebuild. Because after that, they get back to the tough schedules. They got to go all the way back out east again, play NC State. NC State coming off a bye. well rested. Grayson McCall, Jordan Waters, Casey Concepcion. This is a very, very, very good NC State team that could challenge for an ACC title this year. Stanford does not have what it takes to beat them, especially at their house, where the Wolfpack are 22-4 at home over the last 4 years. They then get a bye week before facing Louisville, a Louisville team who is loaded offensively. Once again, I think a common theme here is a lot of these teams have pretty good offenses. Stanford doesn't have the defense just yet to slow them down, and that's where it's going to be an issue. Or, the offense comes out there, torches Stanford's defense. The Stanford offense isn't good enough to sustain drives. The defense gets worn down, and that's where they end up losing the games. That's the issue Stanford's going to run into here. They're going to lose to Louisville, who loaded up in the transfer portal. They're going to lose to California, who I think will play this game a little bit closer. Last year, Stanford lost by 12, 27-15. It's interesting to see them play California, a former Pac-12 foe, Pac-12 rival, now still rivals, just in the ACC, still a conference game. But the Cardinals were outgained 455 yards to 291 last year, and California arguably has their best team since 2019. Just don't see the Golden Bears slipping up here. And then in the season finale at San Jose State, I do believe that the Cardinals get their third win of the season to match last year's win total. Ken Numatalolo comes in, former head coach at Navy, now the head coach at San Jose State. The Spartans are going through a bit of a rebuild, will be going through a bit of a rebuild. Stanford is in a much better spot offensively, defensively, and at the head coaching position. They will beat San Jose State to kind of end the year on a high, match last year's win total. The silver lining is they'll be more competitive. The stats will be a lot better. They will get a conference win on their resume, and they will build towards next year, because the beauty of this is Stanford, out of their projected starters, only 5 of them are seniors. So if the majority of this team sticks around, and then maybe they add a few to the transfer portal as well, but if the majority of this team sticks around, Stanford will have a significantly more experienced, a significantly better team next year, and that could be the year, in year 3, that's when coaches hit their stride, they take off and maybe challenge for a postseason berth. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to leave your predictions, your thoughts, and comments down in the description below, as well as continuing to like and subscribe. Do not miss out on that. Also, make sure to check out everything down in the description below, our website, thegridironexpert.com, our expert picks. The earlier you sign up for those, the better. You'll win big with us. We can guarantee it, and we want you to become a member of our GE Nation by doing that. So go check it out. Again, everything down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.